would be the day that Juneteenth becomes a national holiday in the United States. That effort has been, yes, thank you, some applause. That effort has been in the making for years, and it could have just as likely been another year, next year, which is what we were expecting. And the swiftness in which it passed the House and the Senate and then signed into law today by President Biden, and all federal agencies are closed tomorrow, is just awesome, just in time. So I think that that brings special significance to our session this evening. And what's interesting is we have not had a national holiday since 1983-ish. And so this is something that's very, very special. And I would bet that not everybody is familiar with what Juneteenth is. So we're going to explore some of the nuances around Juneteenth this evening. What is it? What's its historical legacy and the significance of it? Why do we celebrate it, especially when it is considered to be something related to different paradoxes around freedom? And how do we celebrate it? And everybody's going to brush up on how we celebrate it. Now that it's a holiday, you're going to want to get some tips around that. So without much further ado, our program is going to engage you in a little bit of history, just a teensy bit. It's going to engage you in some discussion with some thought-provoking questions. And we also are going to include snippets of what is traditionally part of a Juneteenth celebration. So with that, let's start with what is Juneteenth? And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Patanisha.
Good afternoon, everybody. Patanisha Davis Pierson with Key Council PC here, also a member of your board of directors. And I'm so excited tonight to be here. And you'll hear a lot of joy in my voice because as a descendant of slaves, I am here celebrating with you guys something that took 165 years to take in the making. So I'm going to say that again. Today's date, what happened today, took 165 years. Let's give another round of applause for Juneteenth. Okay. So my goal today is to share with you and to talk a little bit more about the history behind this new holiday. Some may know, some may not know, there are only 12 federally recognized holidays. And today, Juneteenth made the 12th one. So I'm just over the moon excited. So I'm going to share with you all Juneteenth and what's this thing about? Why are we excited? Why are we celebrating? And we're going to get a little bit more into what is the historical narrative of Juneteenth. So as many of us explore it, maybe as early as high school, we learn more about the Emancipation Proclamation. January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. A picture of it is pictured on your PowerPoint. The proclamation came as the U.S. was entering into its third year of the Civil War. The proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves are and henceforth shall be free. So that should have been a huge celebratory occasion, fireworks going off. That didn't occur because the emancipation did not immediately end slavery. And many Black people remained enslaved and even died by the hands or the orders of their masters. Texas, 1865, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by the President of the United States, Black people were still enslaved. Although the Confederate Army, by and through Robert E. Lee, formally surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant, many Confederate soldiers continued to fight in Texas until the middle of 1865. Once the Texan soldiers stopped fighting, General Gordon Granger sent General Order Number 3 from his headquarters in Galveston, Texas, announcing the end of legalized slavery in Texas. The enslaved Blacks were told that they were no longer slaves in the state of Texas. And on June 19th, 1865, they were informed that they were free. This was nearly 2 years after the proclamation was signed. However, despite that issuance of General Order Number 3, the proclamation, and despite the proclamation, Emancipation Proclamation being issued, and Texas slaves finally being notified 2 years later that they were no longer slaves, slavery actually didn't end until around the middle of December of that same year, 1865. And this only occurred after the 13th Amendment of the Constitution was ratified by the states. So we got fireworks going off. And the reason why we set the fireworks off is because June 19th, 1865 marks a significant day in Black history, in the history of the United States. It is also called Juneteenth. It is acknowledged by many Blacks as their own Independence Day. And you'll hear a little bit more about this from Benisa. Well, we already have an Independence Day, but on July 4th, 1776, my people were not free. So it is our Freedom Day. Juneteenth is our Freedom Day, a day to be free of an oppressor, free of shackles, free of forced labor, and free from being sold like cattle, freedom from bondage. Texas was the first state to make Juneteenth a holiday in 1980. And so when Michael talks to you more about Juneteenth and what people do on Juneteenth, Texans do way different. There is an amazing book that just came out. I'll go ahead and share it with you guys. It is called On Juneteenth by Annette Gordon Reed. I encourage you guys to get it because she talks some more about what Texans do on Juneteenth. And on February 20th, 21, so this was just this year, both the Senate and the House lawmakers reintroduced the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act. Last year, Vice President Harris said the following: on Juneteenth, we remember the millions who suffered, died, and survived the crushing reality of slavery in America. And we recommit ourselves to continuing in the fight for equal justice for all. Without question, it should be recognized with the respect of a federal holiday. Prior to yesterday, only 47 states recognized this as a holiday. However, as of today, Juneteenth became a federally recognized holiday. Yippee, yippee, yippee. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn our program over to Benisa Berry, but I just want to show you the fireworks going off. We're going to celebrate all through this program. And we're not just celebrating a holiday and barbecue and beer and good music. We're celebrating on the history that this country was built on the back of slaves and that slavery ended. And we're so happy for that. And here's our big celebratory photo that it all came to play. Benisa, I'll turn it over to you now. You're muted, Benisa. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Patanisha. And now that we know a little bit about what Juneteenth is, it hasn't come without controversy. And one of the things we want to explore is this juxtaposition between Juneteenth and the 4th of July. So the 4th of July is associated with the independence of the United States, and that's when we celebrate Freedom Day. Yet, as you just heard, Juneteenth has been Freedom Day for people who were enslaved at the time of the Declaration of Independence. And many of you may be familiar with Frederick Douglass and one of his most famous speeches. He was a great orator, and this is one that has been very powerful. And it's called What to the Slave is the 4th of July. And you can imagine the irony of Frederick Douglass being invited to deliver a speech at an event that was commemorating the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And when he got up and talked about, yes, you have these ideals of freedom and liberty, yet this country has people who aren't free and who don't have their liberty. And that's a little bit of, there's a little bit of hypocrisy in that, and we're not achieving those ideals. So what we're going to do is watch a video. And this is a special video because it's the descendants of Frederick Douglass who are actually delivering his speech. And they talk a little bit about the speech at the end in terms of the implications of something that was delivered in 1852 to today. And then we're going to have a little bit of a discussion around that as well. So Teresa.
Do I look there or look there? Okay. Okay. My name is Alexa Ann Watson, and I am the great-great-great-granddaughter of Frederick
Douglass is my great-great-great-great.
I am the great-great-great-granddaughter of Frederick Douglass.
I am the great-great-great-great-grandchild.
I've been counting on my fingers since I was like 5.
Whenever you're ready, here we go.
This is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom.
Fellow citizens, I shall not presume to dwell at length on the associations that cluster about this day. The simple story of it is that 76 years ago, the people of this country were British subjects.
Oppression makes a wise man mad. Your fathers were wise men, and if they did not go mad, they became restive under this treatment.
With brave men, there's always a remedy for oppression.
They succeeded, and today you reap the fruits of their success. The freedom gained is yours, and you, therefore, may properly celebrate this anniversary.
Fellow citizens, pardon me. Allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence?
Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us?
I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary.
Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common.
The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me.
The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me.
This 4th of July is yours, not mine.
You may rejoice, I must mourn.
Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions.
At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed.
Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke.
For it is not light that is needed, but fire.
It is not the gentle shower, but thunder.
We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake.
The feeling of the nation must be quickened.
The conscience of the nation must be roused.
The propriety of the nation must be startled.
The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed.
And its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced.
What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim.
To him, your celebration is a sham.
Your boasted liberty an unholy license.
Your national greatness, swelling vanity.
Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless.
Your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence.
Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery.
Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings,
With all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him
Mere bombast.
Fraud.
deception,
Impiety.
and hypocrisy. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Allow me to say in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country.
This speech was written almost 170 years ago, but there are I mean, this part of it is still extremely relevant, especially with today's protests.
I think that when people are oppressed, they feel silenced. And if someone feels silenced, they get angry. There are certain tactics that you need to use to get people to really hear your voice. And it's not always going to be just like a very calm discussion.
I think he's mostly talking to the people who are already on his side, but believes that they can still try to talk this out, or that things are still justifiable. I know a lot of people at the time were saying, and people now are still saying, that it's not as bad as it could be.
While the 4th of July probably does not feel the same to me as it does to others, I wouldn't say that it has no meaning, because it is the time when America as a country became free from another country. But I would say that it's not the time in which I gained my freedom.
He had a lot of hope, especially for his age. And like, I'm getting to the point in my life where I'm only 20 years old, but I'm exhausted. Like, I have these thoughts like, will we ever really get to this point? Or is this really something that we should actually spend our time fighting for?
Somebody once said that pessimism is a tool of white oppression, and I think that's true. I think in many ways we are still slaves to the notion that it will never get better. But I think that there is hope, and I think it's important that we celebrate Black joy and Black life, and we remember that change is possible, change is probable, and that there's hope.
Amazing.
Oh, you're still muted, Benisa.
So first of all, I'm just going to acknowledge that there's a lot packed in to that snippet of the speech. And what we're going to do is go into breakout rooms, and we're going to ask you to discuss what stands out to you about Douglas's speech and what implications can you make about celebrating Juneteenth and or the 4th of July. So as Teresa is putting us in breakout rooms, maybe jot down some notes of what stood out to you, what you'd like to share. You're only going to have about 7 to 8 minutes in the breakout rooms. Of this ancestor. Everyone, welcome back, everyone. And we're just a couple of minutes ahead. So we didn't really have any large group discussion planned because we have a really packed agenda. But does anyone would one person like to share something that they learned, or thought was very thought-provoking from your small breakout room that you think would benefit the larger group to hear?
I'll go ahead and
Lisa, I could share. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay,
Hi, my name is Eileen Casanave. I'm president of the California Association of Black Lawyers. And, you know, one thing that was mentioned is the fact that today is now a national holiday. And some companies will have to choose between whether or not they celebrate 4th of July or they celebrate Juneteenth, if they choose to make a choice there. And the question is, you know, the 4th of July is a celebration of our independence, the American independence from Europe. But at that time, when you think about it, it was a small group of people that were made, you know, independent from Europe. The Native Americans that lived in the United States, you know, didn't benefit from that holiday. The African Americans who were enslaved didn't benefit from that holiday. You know, those that were from other countries that were enslaved, those that were Chinese, those that were Japanese, those that were Indian, that were here, that were enslaved, they didn't benefit as well. So that it's interesting to see that holiday almost the equivalent of a Columbus Day. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not, you know, companies decide not to celebrate 4th of July and move to celebrating some of these other holidays that, you know, this may reflect the independence of African Americans, but it also basically, you know, reflects the independence of those that enslaved the African Americans as well. So it was an independence of all peoples associated with slavery. So yeah, it was one of the discussions that we had, and I thought it was very enlightening.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Eileen. I actually happened to be in a meeting today, a staff meeting, and it was around what do you want to see going into next year? And the key thing was we would like to have Juneteenth celebrated as the federal holiday where we get time off, and it's not trading it for another holiday. It's in addition to. So we wanted to make that really clear. So we're going to continue our program with these themes around freedom. And when you think of the ending of the Frederick Douglass speech, and especially the littlest one, who really resonated with what Frederick Douglass had said in terms of recognizing that the Declaration of Independence and liberty and freedom are ideals that the country strives towards. And when seen in that way, there is hope as we continue to strive. Yet that has not always been so apparent in our country. And it's been very difficult for Black African Americans to be seen, first of all, just as human, to be seen for their contributions and to be seen for who they really are. So I'm going to turn this over to Jonathan to explore this a little bit more with a reading with James Baldwin.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Jonathan Lee. It's my pleasure to be here, to be a part of the team putting this program together. Thank you for Teresa for putting the photograph of James Baldwin up. As a brief introduction or a reminder, if you're already familiar with James Baldwin, let me just give you a little bit of information before I get to the reading excerpt. So James Baldwin was a prolific writer, literary figure, and activist during the 20th century. He was born in Harlem in 1924, and he experienced harassment and mistreatment by police during his youth. In his teens, he lived through a period of racial strife and unrest in New York City that included the 1943 riots in Harlem. He began writing at 17, and he was first published at 24. He emigrated to Europe in his 20s, and he lived abroad for the rest of his life, primarily in France, but also in Switzerland and Turkey. He died in 1987. And while living abroad, Baldwin returned to the United States frequently and became a national figure for both his literary accomplishments as a novelist, essayist, and poet, but also for his social activism. For example, he was active in the civil rights movement, including both SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and CORE, the Congress for Racial Equality, during the early 1960s. He participated in the March on Washington in August 1963 and the Selma to Montgomery March in 1965. I'm going to read excerpts from a letter that James Baldwin wrote to his 14-year-old nephew, also named James. It was first published in December 1962 in a magazine called Progressive, shortly before the centennial of the Emancipation Proclamation. Patanisha introduced us to that document tonight. It was signed on January 1st, 1863, and it, as you heard, it declared that enslaved people in the Confederate States were free thenceforward and forever, while at the same time it exempted, its scope was exempted from the 4 border states and those areas of the Confederate States controlled by the Union Army. So Baldwin's letter reflects on the Emancipation Proclamation just shy of its 100th anniversary as he speaks as an uncle to his nephew in these excerpts. It's a long letter, so we're reading 3 excerpts that I think in total will take about 3 minutes. And we're going to post a link to the entire letter in the chat so you can read the entire letter at a later time. And I commend you to the full version of the letter, but this will give you certainly a good introduction to it. So the title is Letter to My Nephew on the 100th Anniversary of the Emancipation. Dear James, I have begun this letter 5 times and torn it up 5 times. I keep seeing your face, which is also the face of your father and my brother. I have known both of you all your lives and have carried your daddy in my arms and on my shoulders, kissed him and spanked him and watched him learn to walk. I don't know if you've known anybody from that far back, if you've loved anybody that long, first as an infant, then as a child, then as a man. You gain a strange perspective on time and human pain and effort. You were born into a society which spelled out with brutal clarity and in as many ways as possible that you were a worthless human being. You were not expected to aspire to excellence. You were expected to make peace with mediocrity. Wherever you have turned, James, in your short time on this earth, you have been told where you could go and what you could do and how you could do it, where you could live and whom you could marry. Try to imagine how you would feel if you woke up one morning to find the sun shining and all the stars aflame. You would be frightened because it is out of the order of nature. Any upheaval in the universe is terrifying because it is so profoundly attacks one's sense of one's own reality. Well, the black man has functioned in the white man's world as a fixed star, as an immovable pillar. And as he moves out of his place, heaven and earth are shaken to their foundations. You don't be afraid. I said that it is intended that you should perish in the ghetto. Perish by never being allowed to go behind the white man's definitions, by never being allowed to spell your proper name. You have, and many of us have, defeated this intention. And by this terrible law, a terrible paradox, those innocents who believe that your imprisonment made them safe are losing their grasp of reality. But these men are your brothers, your lost younger brothers. And if the word integration means anything, this is what it means. That we, with love, shall force our brothers to see themselves as they are, to cease fleeing from reality and begin to change it. For this is your home, my friend. Do not be driven from it. Great men have done great things here and will again. And we can make America what America must become. It will be hard, James, but you come from sturdy peasant stock, men who picked cotton and dammed rivers and built railroads. And in the teeth of the most terrifying odds, achieved an unassailable and monumental dignity. You come from a long line of great poets, some of the greatest poets since Homer. One of them said, "The very time I thought I was lost, my dungeon shook and my chains fell off." You know, and I know that the country is celebrating 100 years of freedom, 100 years too soon. We cannot be free until they are free. God bless you, James, and Godspeed, your uncle, James. Now, to set up our breakout room, let me just add, Baldwin's letter clearly adds a lot of texture to tonight's discussion about Juneteenth. While there was cause to celebrate the arrival of the news of the Emancipation Proclamation, delayed by 2.5 years, and then the end of slavery, Baldwin is calling our attention to a realization that freedom was not just late in arriving, but was and remains incomplete and a promise unrealized. In making his argument, Baldwin refers to love, brotherhood, freedom, dignity, and others. Pick one of these themes or another that you found noteworthy and reflect on how you felt challenged by Baldwin's letter and whether today we are more or less free than when he wrote it.
Something that might be insightful for the whole group to hear regarding from your discussion.
Benisa, I know I'm one of the presenters, but I'd love to share something that came up in our group.
Okay, you're on, Patanisha. Thank you.
Wonderful. One of the things that came up that we saw and was in Jonathan's reading, there was a definition of integration. And it says that integration means that we, with love, shall force our brothers to see themselves as they are and to cease fleeing from reality and begin to change it. And so in our group, we talked about how close we are to that and how far we are. But one of the things that I spoke about being an African-American woman is that it is hard to do this with love and to remind myself to be loving, even though my people have faced so much hatred. And so we talked about it. And one of the things that came up in our discussion is that, and I thought Peggy said it so well, is that she said, white men have more latitude to express outrage. And that I may not have the freedom to express the same outrage. And so it's almost as if many African Americans, and I don't want to speak for all of us because we're not all the same and we don't have all the same experiences, is that we are left with a learned behavior or teaching our children to not have full access to their rights to question things because we want them to stay alive. And to also not speak out or be outrageous because we don't carry the same privilege. So it is a completely different upbringing, I think, in our community because of that latitude we don't have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And Jonathan, did you have any other summary or closing comments you wanted to make for this section?
I would just say that I thought our group talked about a concept that was interesting as well, which is, are any of us really free if any one of us is not, as Americans? Picking up on Baldwin's argument that, because really the people that he refers to as the oppressors are the ones who are lost. They're the ones in need of love. They're the ones who he's asking his nephew to reach out to. And if we all took that mindset, that if there's any one person who isn't experiencing freedom in this country, that's unacceptable to all of us, that would be a good starting point for a frame of reference.
Absolutely. And that really sums up what usually happens in Juneteenth celebrations such as this one. It's important to recognize the progress that has been made, but at the same time, we have to recognize that there's more work to do. And our destinies are interconnected and interrelated. And in the and then in the reading, it really was stated by James Baldwin, we cannot be free until they are free. So it's not until everyone is free. And I don't know what's happening in every breakout room, but I just want to acknowledge everyone for participating. These are some pretty heavy, excerpts that we're sharing with you that you are responding to in terms of your preliminary thoughts on the fly. And some of you may be approaching it from different experiences and perspectives. Some of you are coming from lived experience. Some of you are coming from an intellectual basis. So I just want to thank everyone for just being open and sharing whatever it is in your heart and in your mind to do today, because this really, again, is part of bringing us all together and, really understanding how we can move forward together. So now that we've looked at what Juneteenth is, and we have looked at why we celebrate, we're going to take a look at how we celebrate. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Pierson.
All right. I am on that relay team. When you hand that relay pole off and that person grab it and take off, I'm going to shift gears now. So how do we celebrate it? Well, I'm going to just tell you from my perspective. So I'm a Bay Area kid. I was born and raised in Oakland and lived in NorCal, most of my life. And I went to high school in San Jose. So I'm going to go back, way back, dinosaur days. Growing up initially, I didn't know what Juneteenth was. I had no idea. It really wasn't celebrated in Northern California until around the 80s. So around the 80s is when it kind of started gaining popularity. And I think that was, it had been celebrated, I think, throughout the country here and there. but I think in the early 80s, it really started to pick up steam. In the Bay Area in particular, it really kind of took off. So I was in San Jose when it really started to hit in the South Bay. And what does a celebration looks like? It looks like it's amazing. So when I first found out about Juneteenth, I didn't know what it was. I was hearing about this Juneteenth. So I went to my parents to say, what is Juneteenth? I was never taught what Juneteenth was in school. And my dad sat me down and he told me a little bit, well, it's, June 19th. It's the day that, slaves were freed and, he, 1865, blah, blah, blah. He went, tried to tell me a little bit about it. And I was like, oh, okay. And I knew 1776, 4th of July, and I was trying to reconcile that. And I was like, okay, all right. And I really didn't make the connection, it was kind of, all right. So we were going to a Juneteenth festival. And that's where we typically go in Northern California. We go to a festival, and it is a festival. You go, there's gonna be food, there's gonna be music, there's gonna be entertainment, there's gonna be poetry, there's gonna be dance, there's gonna be young people, there's gonna be old people, there's gonna be teenagers, there's gonna be rides, there's gonna be everything. And it's gonna be a lot of fun. So when you get there, the parking is gonna be a mess because everybody's getting there. It's gonna be lines of cars, and typically it's at parks. You have it like at a park, or you had it at fairgrounds. You get there, like I said, lots of cars, people are dressing up. You wear, it's summertime, so you're wearing your nice shorts, your nice short set. Everybody gets dressed up. You wanna put your best stuff on. You wanna look good, especially when you're like a little teenager. You wanna get out there, you wanna look good for the girls, and you come out, or the girls dress up good, looking good for the boys. You come out, and it's an amazing experience because you go through a whole cultural experience. You'll hear people give speeches talking about history. You'll hear spirituals, like Negro spirituals. You hear choir speaking. You're gonna hear gospel music. You're gonna hear you hear some rappers. You hear some rap music. You'll get performances by young people. It's such a blend of just everything, of current, of old stuff, of new stuff. You're gonna get traditional African dance. You're gonna get maybe some modern dance. You're gonna get some hip hop dance. You're gonna get a little bit of everything. So it's like a whole hodgepodge of African-American culture, such a cross experience of everything. You get a little taste of everything. And then the food, my favorite part is, I like to eat. So the food is always amazing. So you're gonna have like barbecue. You're gonna have soul food galore. You're gonna have fried fish. You're gonna have greens. You're gonna have a peach cobbler. You're gonna have all these amazing dishes. You're gonna get a good taste of everything, and it's all condensed into this one day. So you really look forward to this thing. So it's bigger than 4th of July. It's 4th of July without the holiday, without the fireworks, but on steroids. So that's kind of a taste of the Northern California experience of Juneteenth. So if you get a chance to go to a celebration, you definitely want to go to a Juneteenth celebration because it's going to be a celebration. It's a party.
It's a party break, folks.
Okay, that's good.
It's a celebration.
Let's hear it.
So,
That's funny.
all right, so
Why'd you stop? You didn't do your dance yet. No, I'm just kidding.
I didn't do my dance because I was given a note that I ran out of time. So for the breakout rooms, I'm going to segue. So we're going to talk about, for our breakout rooms, we're going to talk about what holiday or cultural celebration do you have for your culture, your family, your experiences? So what's important to your family? What do you guys do culturally in your cultural celebration or holidays? What do you do? So
I just wanted to mention this year, the San Jose Juneteenth Festival is at the fairgrounds. And so if you live in San Jose or near San Jose, join us. AACSA is sponsoring the event at the fairgrounds. And then there's also one at the lake in Oakland.
All right, and it looks like Patanisha put the question in the chat, and I'm going to open up all the rooms. We're changing it up a little bit this time, so you'll be in a different room this time. Have fun.
And as people were coming in, I was just saying, I'm sure there was a lot of conversation about food in the breakout rooms. And so I'm getting hungry, but we wanted to include the opportunity for people to connect with their own culture and how they celebrate, because Juneteenth may be something that you don't have or feel an emotional connection with. And we wanted everybody to recognize that celebrations such as Juneteenth and all of the other celebrations that you all just talked about really are how people identify our values and what's meaningful to each of us. And there's a commonality, not only the food, but there's probably song, there's reflection on the historical legacy associated with the celebration. And most importantly, it's the glue that really holds us together through a shared sense of humanity. So thank you for sharing that. We are going to begin our closing at this point, and we want to do this by sharing with you the Black National Anthem. A lot of people may not realize that there is a song called Lift Every Voice and Sing that is referred to as the Black National Anthem. It was actually developed long before the Star-Spangled Banner. And it's something of a tradition within the Black community, and it's often something that is sung in Juneteenth celebrations. So it was actually written by an NAACP leader, James Weldon Johnson, who also happened to be a public school principal, and this was in 1900. So he wrote it as a poem, and then his brother happened to be a music teacher, and he put it to music. And the first time it was performed, it was in honor of Abraham Lincoln's birthday, and it was sung by 500 school children. So we want to share that with you today, because what it really reflects and what it symbolizes is it's the solemn yet hopeful appeal for liberty of Black Americans. So we're going to show you a video. If you are familiar with it, or if you aren't, please sing along. The words are also included in the video. And as you watch it, just, a lot of things will pop out, and just take in that experience. Teresa?
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high Glitter the chains we run, felt in the grave when hope unborn had died. Yet with the steady breath and the hungry we feed, come to the place for which our parents sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading on path through the blood of the soil. Now from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy mind led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places of God when we met thee. Lest our hearts drunk with the wine of the word forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Wow, very good.
Nice
So
job, Jonathan.
again, another very powerful song that is so perfect for Juneteenth, and especially today. It just sums up the struggle, the pain, the resilience, the hope, and the joy, all rolled into one. So with that, I want to thank everybody for your participation. And for attending. I especially want to thank the committee that put this program together. Just say hi, Patanisha, Pierson, Mike Pierson, Heidi Taylor, Julianne Giamona, Jonathan Lee, and Summer Selleck, and of course, Teresa Hurley. So thank you, everyone. And we hope to see you. We have 2 more town hall meetings for the quarterly meetings before the end of the year. Those are on September 16th and November 4th. On September 16th, we will be doing a movie short screening and engaging you in some very thoughtful, deep conversation. So we hope to see you then. And before we sign off, celebrate Juneteenth. It's official. And thank you, Aileen, for sharing the San Jose celebration that's going on. If anybody else has an announcement for any celebrations that are happening locally, I'll open it up to you.
I'd like to also just give a shout out and a thank you to all of our sponsors who have helped us put on all of the DEI programs this year. We really, really appreciate your support.
There are multiple celebrations all over the Bay Area, including Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco, Marin,
Antioch,
San Jose,
Pittsburgh.
Antioch. There are multiple celebrations. If you want to check them out this weekend, you should participate.
If you can't make it to one, start your own Juneteenth celebration.
There you go.
All right,
Absolutely.
guys.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Great to see everybody.
Hi, everyone.